Hello. Good morning. Let me send out the tweets first. Okay. Welcome to the stream. And I'm thinking today, first of all, sorry for starting the stream a little late than usual. Funny thing is, I find out that I only need to sleep 5 hours every day. So I chose to get up at 5 to do the stream, but that means every time I sleep later than midnight, my biology kicks in. I guess I just there were 2 alarms that I missed, and the volume were like really high. And it's not only just the alarms. I also have like the Google routine set up just to play news after the alarm, and I was like, okay, so I missed both alarms and the probably 5-minute worth of news playing, and I just slept through that. So that's pretty impressive. But yeah, so today started 1 hour late. Hey Aller. And the stream will last for 1 hour instead of 2 like usual. So yeah. But today we are tackling a pretty big issue, I would say, because for the past few days we've been working on this pull request conversation page where there's just a lot of data that needs to be fetched, right? So if we take a look at this, basically the GitHub service right here, we have this get PR conversation nodes async method, and basically we're calling 5 APIs, right? We're calling 5 APIs, and we're doing await 5 times. And this is the slowest part of that page. Basically, that page has such a long loading time just because we're fetching so much data, right? And that's not only that's not the worst part. Like, it is slow for a small PR, and it'll be even slower for a bigger PR with lots of conversations and lots of commits, especially commits, right? Like for example, we're fetching everything here. There's no pagination. We don't expect a pull request to last really long anyways, right? Like normally what you expect to have like really long conversations is like issues. They tend to have like pages after pages. So what you do is that you tend to like do paginations for the conversations in issues, but PRs, when they open, they tend to close it within best scenario days, right? But like if it's not like best scenario, normally they're closed within. I say time is not like super relative here. Like they tend to close a PR within a limited amount of conversation, and after that amount of conversation, normally people reach a point of okay, either we need to work on this a little bit more so we close this PR for not gonna merge it, or it's good enough and there's enough fix and there's enough testing to actually merge it, right? So but it is ridiculous right now. It is very ridiculous that we have to do 5 API calls. And what I have just found out is that well, actually I knew this a little bit earlier as well. So if we take a look at the actual website, the actual page of the pull request that I always use for testing, you can see there are things like this. It's a comment that I made on a specific commit. It's not a comment on a specific line in the commit, but it says commented on this commit. And that's something we can do in GitHub now, right? Like if you just scroll to the bottom, you'll see this comment box just for the whole commit instead of, like these ones for individual lines. And this is what generates this one right here. And we don't have that. And in order to get this is hard because you need to call one API to get all of the comments about this commit for all of these commits, basically. So this will escalate from 5 API calls to, well, God knows how many API calls, right? Most of them will be empty because normally people don't just go around and comment on each and every commit. They normally have like lines they need to comment on or whatever, but in extreme cases, this process will be extremely painful. And we don't know until we do the API calls. So we have to wait until the API call finishes. So it'll be long anyways, right? So I always knew that this needs to be fixed. It just never pushed me to actually fix it because 5 API calls so far, it's not that bad. But what is that bad is this commit comments, right? This is like super bad. We can't deal with this. So what we have to do at this point is to really think about using something called GraphQL. And GraphQL allows us to describe what we want in the front end and send the shape of the data that we want in one big chunk of API call, and the backend will just assemble the data in the shape that we described and send it back to us. So basically, for everything that we ever need is just one API call. So it's much easier. But what's been challenging for the GitHub side, especially for if you're coding in .NET, it's well, basically GitHub already has like the GraphQL API, right? Like if you take a look at the like they have this API documentation page for GraphQL, and if I already signed in as my with my account, and they have this curious thing on the left where you can describe the data, the shape of the data you want. And right here is like the viewer is the user that you're logged in with, and you can describe for viewer we want the login is like the string, it's like a username, right, and avatar URL. And down here I described that I also want repositories from, and so here you get to define the query of like the parameters of each query, right? So for repository you want a name and the owner. So this is a repository that I've been testing on, so owner is me, and I also pass in the name as well. And within the repository, you can be like, I want the names and I want a pull request. And for the pull request, we know there are like a lot of pull requests, but we want the pull requests that are open, and we want to take the first 100. And there can be also like other conditions like after, right? So like this can be used for pagination, and within pull request, I'd be like for each pull request they call it nodes. For each pull request I want the title, I want the ID, and for each pull request I want all of the commits within the pull request. And for all of the commits within the pull request, they also like for all of the things that are lists, they call it nodes, right? They call it nodes within it. So for all the nodes, I want the commit to have ID and to have all of the comments. And for all of the comments, I want the body of the comment. So it is like really convenient way to assemble data related to UI, right? So right here, what you can see is that it gives me exactly what I was asking for, right? For viewer, the login is me because I logged in, and this is my avatar URL. And for repositories, it gives me back the repository I was asking for. And pull requests that are open has 2. So basically, you can see here that's 1 and that's the other one, right? So this one is the first. Okay, let's see the one that we actually showed just now. So this is the one, right? Test with 4 T's, and yes, like this many commits, and for every commit, it has given us back the ID, and comments. For most comments, it's gonna be empty, like I said, right? But it's fine. It's fine because they pass it back to us. And we can do the parsing on the front end as well. But it is one API call, so it's much easier. But if you do scroll down here, you will see that for the one that we do have a comment, it's going to show up, right? It says good code over here is exactly what we see on the pull request page, right? This one right here, good code. So it's very convenient to use. GraphQL is very convenient to use, but the one caveat is that, well, to use it, there are 2 ways to use it. Basically, you can use the raw GraphQL API. You can assemble all the data that and the queries that you need, and put your authentication token in the header, and basically just send out the HTTP request and then get back your data that way, right? That's one way. That's the raw way of doing it. And for GitHub, they actually have like libraries for each language, so you can do the thing that you normally do in the ways that you're familiar with for APIs, and then you can get back the data in the shape of the models that they define, right? Basically, it's like a GitHub SDK, but for GraphQL. And for .NET, we have octokit.graphql.net, basically. And it's pretty good. But one thing in particular that we need to pay attention to is that it's still in beta. It's 0.1.8. So it is seriously unfinished, right? And I say that because I found out about this repo a long time ago, because I've been thinking about moving to GraphQL for a really long time. So I've been looking at this repo for a while now. You can see I made an issue. I opened an issue last year, July. So even before I released the app, I was asking questions because I saw no progress in this repo. Basically, there's no progress. There's no recent commits. No one's talking about this, and there's no like roadmaps for anything. So I was like, okay, has this project been abandoned, right? Like, is that the case? Like, this seems like an official project. If you're abandoning it, you better have like a reason, or you better have like an announcement, right? Hello, welcome to the stream. So for this one, I was like, okay, what is the status? And basically, this guy just came in, right? So this is the originator of this project, but he is no longer working at GitHub anymore, and he doesn't have time to maintain this repo with his free time. So basically, this project is in a way it's dead, but they do have like some commits sometime before, I think, yeah, October last year. Don't really know what the commits are. It seems like they're like, yeah, so there are some like users trying to fix it, but to be honest, I'm not really hopeful, right? Like, other than, updating the schema, updating the tests, and this user is like, okay, they have like a sync schema, right? So basically it's like syncing schema with the okay, it seems like a really long request just for syncing the schema, and basically schema just means like the shape of the data. So basically what I'm trying to say is that I'm not really hopeful for actually using this project, especially um, especially because I actually tried it last night just to install it, and I have to have like two usings, right? Basically, you have the original using of the OctoKit, and OctoKit is actually a really good um, SDK, right? It is the REST API, GitHub REST API SDK for .NET, and it's pretty good. And the version number, I believe, is, well, at least it's I don't quite know the version number, and it's not super useful for this context. But basically, it is production ready, right? It's stable. But this one is the one for GraphQL, and it's just not very stable right now. And having both of them in the GitHub service is messing up a lot of things, basically. And what I'm trying to do here is just have, like, this is a normal GitHub client that we use from OctoKit, and this is the GraphQL connection that we have for OctoKit.GraphQL.connection, and it's not really working, right? I tried to start a connection, and down here I have the query right here. They have a builder, query builder with fluent syntax. I find it very hard to use because not only do you have to learn GraphQL syntax, but you also have to learn their query builder syntax. You know what I mean? So it's not. I find it like, if you're already using a library, why do you layer on top of it another library just to confuse the user, right? Like, the knowledge at this point is not like super transferable anymore, right? If you want to learn GraphQL, then you need to learn the syntax of GraphQL and how to assemble it, how to use it. And if you layer on if you put on a layer of link API on top of it, it's not helpful for anyone. So I was like, okay, but there is the option to assemble the query yourself. So that's what I'm doing. And I was like, okay, so for this one, we'll just run the query and see what we get. And this is exactly the same query we get from the Explorer I was showing earlier. So normally it'll get the same thing, right? At least that's the case that we would want. But what the behavior is, the app won't even start now. So if I click on this, it compiles okay, but it'll just be stuck at the splash screen forever. And I don't really know why, and I actually don't really want to find out either. Like, the library is just not ready from the look of it. But you know what we can do is that we can put a, like, you see that it's basically stuck here. Normally it wouldn't take this long for the splash screen to be passed, right? So let's stop let's stop debugging, and we're gonna put a stop. We're gonna put a breakpoint over here, and let's see if we can hit it. Okay, so I just did a clean of the the changes that I made. So basically, right now the app is without those changes that I made for the GraphQL. So what we're gonna do is that we're just gonna do the raw GraphQL API thing. We're gonna assemble the queries ourselves, and we're gonna have like a HTTP client to do the actual calling the API and getting the results. And somehow we're gonna need to map the results to our model, right? Basically, what the SDK does is that it gives you the model back with a really nice object, and we currently we don't have that. So that's basically the hard part, is to do what the library does for you. And so you see, without those changes, the app builds fine and it runs okay. And also, what I did a little bit yesterday is that I added this dev console, so I have my token right here. Don't bother to copy it, because every time I log out and log back in, it's going to be different. What it is for myself, so I can test it, right? But without further ado, let me introduce the way that I normally do to implement features like this. So, I'm not I'm not stupid, right? Like, basically, this is a really good project, and I do think if someone comes back and start maintaining it, and if they do release like a 1.0 of a really production ready library, and it covers all the use cases that I need, like, I'm gonna switch to it in a heartbeat, right? In a heartbeat, basically, because for an app to take advantage of GitHub's API, you need something like this. You can never compete with the backend, with the actual website. The website does server-side rendering, so they have no database overhead for assembling data across different tables, right? That's essentially what's happening right here, is that we are assembling all of the data across different tables in the database on the front end. So we're calling different API calls just to do the thing that they can do on the server side, and assemble the UI on the server side, and then just send back the HTML and just display it on the front end, right? Basically, if we don't have GraphQL, our app will always be slower than the website. So yeah, if this is usable one day, I'm more than happy to come back. Or if my experiments work out, I'd be more than happy to maintain this myself, right? Because it's such an essential piece of GitHub. Potentially, it's not right now, but potentially it could be, right? So for now, what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna clone this repo, okay, and I'm gonna take a look at what the bare minimum that they're doing to at least do the API calls, right? So for that part, I think I already kind of know how they're doing it. So let me just open this solution right here. Okay, so I think most of their logic is in this core project. And right here, they have this thing called connections, right? And connections basically is just the thing that I showed earlier. My current GitHub API also has connections, but connections is already like pretty raw part of the API. They use other helpers to help you do the connection to help you send the APIs out without using the connections. But this one, like, connections is like the raw part of the API, but that's exactly what we need. So basically they have this URL. Okay, you know what? Let's do the thing. Let's do this. So let's have a class. Let's call it Graphql service. Let's call it GitHub GraphQL service. So basically right here, we're going to implement something that's like very, very raw. For the first time, we're going to have like the API endpoint hard-coded in our service, and we're going to have like the default type. Basically, we're going to repeat a lot of things that the library does without using the library. So it doesn't have conflicts with our existing SDK, and we get a much raw information than normally is needed for a library, right? So right here we can do is like we make the class public. By the way, I have no understanding on how classes works. If you make them public or sealed or internal or private, I make everything public because I only have one project and there's no other projects using my classes, so I don't really much care about things. So other than these two, what I would also need is to construct the token basically, and I do think that they need a name, but let's see what let's see what they use the product name for. Product name for our case is just JitHub, right? And it doesn't really matter for what we pass in, but let's see. And they see like underneath they just use HTTP client, so we can do the same as well. And yeah, so basically this is the thing, right? Query is the thing we can construct ourselves. They do a request, and this is just normal HTTP request message with a post. Is this a post? They also have run. I think the example I saw was run instead of post. Create request. Oh, create request for creating things. Well, for us, I think we only need run, and we're getting back some strings. So for run, you get a query and cancellation token, which I don't know what it is. So let's just think about queries because this seems to be optional. So if currents null, throw an exception and get the token from the credential store, which we already have in our repo. So request. Oh, so they use create request over here, which is interesting because they say it's a post request. That's interesting. Probably it's because they're sending a large amount of data in the HTTP request. So it's not just like, you're hitting an endpoint and you're not passing any data, so you're getting anything back. But to me, it doesn't seem like that it should be post, because if you're not changing any data on the back end, then you shouldn't be a post. At least that's my opinion. But that's how they implemented it. And what they're gonna do is that they're gonna try, and they're gonna get the headers to be, header with a token. This is for authentication. It's gonna accept whatever they accept, but I think it's okay. What is it? Accept. Two references. It's referenced over here. Basically, it's just a default media type as I suspected. Okay, so that was already hard coded in, and they just do a media type with quality header value. That is Yeah, that's a string with high quality over there. I'm joking, of course. User agent is user agent, which is defined over here, referenced here. So yeah, basically user agent is product info header value with a product name and a product version. Don't quite know what that is, but yeah, this is what it is, right? And the content is the query and encoding, and then they just send back the request.